we are now ready to start moving into engraving. We are finished with our graphic in Adobe Illustrator, and now we're ready to transfer that over to the laser cutter. Now to do that, for my Speedy 100 made by Trotec, they use a software called Job Control. So we're going to transfer our graphic from Illustrator to Job Control. To do that, we're going to press Control P, which will take us to our print options. We're going to switch to the Trotec laser cutter. We're going to turn off auto rotate, and then we're going to go into the setup and preferences for the laser cutter. So let's go ahead and do that. So in Illustrator, I have my graphic all done, ready to go. I'm going to do a file print or Control P, either one works. So you can go ahead and do that. Your print window will pop up. One of the first things you're going to want to do is switch to your laser cutter. So I'm going to make sure I'm on the Trotec engraver. And then I'm going to turn off auto rotate. I don't want it to reorientate my object. I want it to stay the way that it is. And then finally, the other thing you want to look at is the document versus the media. We want both of these numbers to match up, and right now they don't. We want it to be 7 5/8 by 7 5/8. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Setup. And then this window is going to pop up. Just click Continue. And then now I want to go specifically into the preferences for the Trotec engraver. So I'm going to click on Preferences. And in the very top for the size settings, the first thing I want to change is my height and width. If you remember, we resized it because of the routed edges. So it was 7.625 by 7.625. So whatever your size of your sign is or whatever that you're working on, that's where you want to type that in. Moving down, actually let's go over here to the left. You could minimize the job size, but I don't want to. I want to keep these parameters. So you could do that, but I'm not going to. The next thing I'm going to move into is material settings. So I'm specifically working with wood. So I'm going to make sure I'm in the wood. And then they have some presets for some different types of wood. You also notice that I've made a few of my custom ones, or one of my students did, and then I have a custom one here. So after you've played around with some of the settings for your engraver, like for the power and the velocity of the engraving, remember black is engrave, red is cut. You can make custom ones, which I highly recommend because you don't want to really play. I don't like changing the default ones because I like to go back to those as kind of like the your 0 or your where you can start from and then tweak from there. So I like to make custom ones, but for this scenario we're just going to use wood and we're going to use oak. But I do use the pine a lot. That's like for those signs that you can get from like Michael's, I'll use the pine. If you did do that vector outline cut, you should see numbers pop in here because it's recognizing that there is a vector cut. Excuse me. Then if we go for our processing options, I normally stick to standard for this first one. The only other one that I've used before is photo optimize. That's if you're actually using a real picture, but that's a whole other story. So let's just stick with standard for right now. Your resolution, I got it up the highest it can go. That's like the quality of the image. So I normally leave it at 1000. Cut line, if you did want it to actually cut out your actual object, if your material is really thin, you could do a rectangular cut and it'll cut the perimeter, or circular or something like that. I normally leave that at none, and then here I'll leave this at color, especially if I have a red cut line, so I'll leave that on color. You could invert. There are some other options in here. Again, this just takes some getting used to and kind of playing around and testing some things out with some different materials to really dial in these settings within your specific engraver. So I'm going to go ahead and click the job control button here, and then I'm going to hit print. Now for some reason, I don't know why, but it doesn't update right away within your preview, and this doesn't update even though I changed those settings. So I don't know why, but I have to click setup again, continue, and then hit print one more time, and then you'll notice now our preview looks good and our numbers match up down here, and I can now hit print. Now when I hit print, we have it set up so it asks you for a job name. Yours will probably just go straight to job control if that's the software, if I could spell nation, if that's the software you're using. And then it should send it directly to job control, which is what it's working on doing right now. When I click in there, ours automatically pops in. Your may pop in over here on the right underneath the jobs. If you don't see it, you may have to hit show all, and then it'll pop up, and then you simply just click and drag it into your workspace. Some things that I'm paying attention to right away is the workspace that I'm given. So my laser cutter can cut 24 by 12. So I want to make sure that my job is never bigger than that. You can move the sign wherever you want. I normally like to either square it up in a corner to make sure that I am specifically exactly where I want to be. And actually, we're going to do something a little bit different than that for this one that I'm going to show you. The other thing I like to do is, after I've clicked on this, I like to hit the little eye up here, which allows me to actually see the current job, and I can zoom in a little bit to kind of see what that's looking like to make sure I'm happy with it. If you did those vector cut lines, you're going to see them on the outside. You're going to see a red line. I know it may look a little funny once it comes into job control, but I assure you that it should be okay. Just make sure you keep an eye on the engraver once it runs. Alright, so that's for bringing it into job control. I'm going to pause it here, and I'm going to video me setting up the laser cutter here in a second. And we'll go over that in the next video. I'll actually run the laser cutter and videotape that with my phone.